Welcome, everyone. This is Norman Kochnik to Eyes on Cricket with me. I won't say my name again. I get a lot of flack about it. The reality is we have an amazing T20 match about to unfold in India, between India and England. There's a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of press releases. I've been very fortunate to have Simon Willis with his 2020 fledglings hashtag or his @ symbol there to me. You have got some work. Last night, the women's program, we have a lot of discussions about development of cricket throughout the world. Malaysia in particular with their T20 program, they don't play ODIs, which is an issue to start with. But with the expansion of women's cricket now with 10, 12 teams, there's a lot to be said about the development there, I think, which is great news. And you'll certainly figure in that, I'm sure. And Chris Vernon, of course, he's been amazing all the way through. We've had a lot of fun with his Vernon 1. He was even messaging last night, and I threw a few messages actually about Brad Pitt. That was quite fun.
It's after my comment that on your age, Norman. I think I commented that you look well for 60.
I was horrified. I'm not a day over 40.
Yeah.
Chinese maths. So look, guys, we've got a program today. It's our normal time slot actually, but the game's obviously later. The game will be at Ahmedabad. The pitch. There's a lot of comment about the fact they're going to be playing 5 matches there. So regardless of what state the pitches are in, it's going to be a definite effect on the pitches over time, purely because it's 5 on the one ground within days of each other, no matter how big the square is. And the discussion on team members, I've seen some very interesting conversation from both sides. India seems to be all over the shop a little bit with their selections, I'm gathering, but England looks a lot more stable. But thank you for your time, guys. It's been wonderful having David Graveney on. Thanks to you, Simon. He's been absolutely fantastic.
No problem. I know he's enjoyed it.
Yeah, and he's been great. And he had a great teamwork with Adam the other day, and that went sensationally. So, all right. We have a lot of people that have been on other aspects of the shows we've been doing. We've had very good numbers, but it's going to be bit before the match. We'll see how we go. All right. So first and foremost, 5 T20s Internationals, as they're called, and the 3 ODIs. Owen Morgan's come out in the press quite strongly about being very confident, talking about the importance of this series regarding both the IPL, yes, but also the World Cup. As it's probably I'm not sure how many hit-outs they'll get post this series, but I think it's extremely important. Don't you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got the 2 best T20 teams in the world playing in this series, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the matchups. England are definitely focused on this format, 100%. You know, they'll be coming out with their strongest teams and trying to get confidence for that, big occasion later in the year. So, Owen Morgan, he knows he's got a good side. That's the thing. He does know he's got a good side, and I think honestly they're going out there full of confidence to win the series.
We've lost you, Norm.
No, I was here. I temporarily had to go off. Just a shame. So yeah, I really like these press conferences because people often say they're very diplomatic, but they're not. They're being quite honest and quite open, and even selection hints have been thrown in everywhere. I'm watching them with great attention, and I must have, this is a bit of a side comment, but the way that Monty Panesar's playing in India, he took Tendulkar's wicket. He took, who else did he take? He took, is it Sehwag's wicket as well?
Beautifully. Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, this might sound ridiculous, but I wouldn't be shocked if India sort of quickly slated him into a squad if they could have a last-minute input. Is that good?
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
That won't be happening.
If Alex Howes can't get in there, I think Monty's struggling.
All right. So, actually, you were saying hello to you, Chris, after you said hello to her last night.
Yeah, I was cheering her on yesterday. She's obviously sort of from our first episode. She's probably one of our biggest fans, isn't she, Norman? But no, it was nice to see her on, and she was really, really good on the show with Preeti last night, wasn't she? I enjoyed it. Norman, you're very crackly your end, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear? Can you hear?
Your Wi-Fi
Yeah,
is going in and out.
Correctly. Can you hear me?
It's like radio signal.
We might. Well, how are we going to do this? Let me just see if I can. No, I'm sorry. We'll keep going. It'll get better. It's probably just a situation. We had a bit of a storm here in Australia. In fact, Sri Lanka had a storm last night. Shapali was knocked out halfway through the video.
Oh, wow.
There's been storms
We
here.
know what their storms are like.
All right. Okay. England team. Simon, go.
I'm going to let Chris go because I know he's done a bit more research on this than me.
It's interesting. At the start of the series, I think I was probably sat there, probably similar to a lot of people, thinking it's going to be a series determined on which batting lineup bats better. Whereas I look at the actual squads and look at the potential lineups, I think that the series will potentially be won on England's bowling, just having a bit more X factor to it. You know, India haven't got Bumrah; they've left Ashwin out. Although, you know, Kohli gave quite an interesting press conference talking about Sundar and Kohli. And you look at the likes of Wood and Archer plus Rashid Moeen, and I guess it'll be Tom Curran or Chris Jordan for the last spot, because I'll probably play Stokes and Sam Curran as batting options. So I kind of see England's bowling attack having a bit more variety and a bit more of punch or X factor, whereas you look at India's, you know, the seamers Thakul will probably play, even like Nas Duran. I know he's been ruled out, but you see their seam attack being a little bit more one-dimensional and not having that sort of extra pace or bounce in it. So I see England being slight favourites. I said at the start, you know, last week that I see it could easily be 3-2 either way and 2-1 either way in the one day. As I think, as Simon said, I've agreed with him that these are probably by far the best two white ball sides in the world in 2020 and one day cricket. And I'm just looking forward to seeing some good cricket and some runs scored. But I don't know what England will do with their top order. You know, Norman seems to say that Liam Livingstone will get a go, but that probably means leaving Johnny Bairstow out. I see Butler and Roy opening. I see Milan at 3. I don't know what they'll do at 4. I think Owen Morgan should batting at 4 personally, but in South Africa he slots in at 5 and Stokes at 6, if I remember. So maybe they see a Livingstone or a Bairstow batting at 4. But yeah, it's interesting to see. There's probably 1 or 2 slots that England have open, whereas India seem a bit more up for debate, really.
I tell you, I think this is a big series for. I think Jason Roy's got to come to the party. You know, he's had a really poor Big Bash. You know, so expectation will be there, and knowing how much of a confidence player he is, you know, if he doesn't have a good series, then England could potentially go, you know, into a major tournament with someone who's out of form. So he'll be wanting to do well out there for a number of reasons.
Well, also he's got the pressure knowing that he's out of form, but you know, you've got Mr. Hales and Mr. Vince sat at home with their feet up watching, thinking, geez, I should be there. And Owen Morgan's been quite, I think he was asked whether he's been vindictive about Hales' selection. But you know, there's a bit of pressure on him. If Roy and Butler go out and score 100 and 250s each, then selection proof. If we're 10 for 1 every game, then you know the press are going to be, you know, heating up his discussions. Where's Alex Hales? So yeah, it's a big series for that side of things as well. I think that Owen Morgan's captaincy is going to be scrutinised on that front too.
Yeah, don't forget, Bairstow could easily go back to opening. That's the other option, and then they could slot one of these other guys in the middle order. So I think there's great flexibility and great competition for places in that top 6. So, but the one thing that England will want to do is certainly come out of this series knowing what their best team is.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be very surprised if there are late additions.
Well, it was the same way they did with the World Cup, didn't they? I think the World Cup we won, they basically came out a year before and said this is going to be 13 of the 14 players. There might be 1 or 2 come in, but we've got a core squad. So, what do you think they'll do with the bowling? How do you think the bowling will be made up?
Yeah, you know, the spinners are obviously crucial. I think the one player that they might miss from the one-day side in the past is someone like Liam Plunkett, who used to come in those middle overs and bowl quick and take wickets. So It'll be really interesting to see from that point of view. Yeah, it's just who are the backup seamers, and Chris Jordan has been in fine form. He's won matches, so I would imagine he's going to play. So yeah, I'm a great believer that you've got to play 5 proper bowlers. And if you get a 6th that's a bits and pieces, fantastic. But the best teams in one-day cricket and 2020 cricket have five wicket-taking options rather than run saving options. I should rather. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to who's got the best bowling attack, because I think the batting lineups are pretty similar.
Yeah, no. So England side, Norman asked to the so say it would be Roy, Butler, Milan. Let's say Bairstow at 4, Morgan 5, Stokes 6, Curran 7, Sam Curran 7, Moeen 8, Rashid 9, Archer Wood, and that gives
you haven't mentioned Jordan there.
It's Curran or Jordan, I guess, because Stokes is the 6th bowler, which he's a pretty decent 6th bowler, but I guess it comes down to Sam Curran or Chris Jordan. I guess that's possibly the slot. They go death bowling. Well, they might think it might swing. That's David Willey sort of had a career in the one-day stuff, just bowling 4 or 5 overs with the new ball. And it might be that in practice, a brand new white ball at this stadium swings around a bit, and they might see that as potentially something different. And they like Curran, don't they? He's been popular in the IPL. He's done pretty well.
Left armour as well. That's a key factor in one-day cricket. The left armours do seem to be more effective. So I think so. The Wood one's an interesting one, if I'm honest. That would be the question mark I have at the moment. Whether they go Wood or Jordan would be my consideration.
It's very interesting with Jordan. Jordan's a bit like the perennial Pollard or players of that nature, having been around the circuit quite a bit, hasn't he? So it's an interesting selection indeed. I've just noticed one of the comments, which was, one saying that you're perfect, Simon, and I kind of agree with what you're saying as well. Prakash Pandey says India will miss Jasprit Bumrah. I'd say it's pretty certain. And there's a lot of discussion by Indian press about the weakness in the Indian bowling attack, which I didn't think I'd be talking about, considering the depth that they've got. But something's not right there, or at least appears not to be right. Jadeja's heavily in training yet again, whether he's appropriate, I'm not sure. But yeah, there's a bizarre. Is it a deliberate attempt by Indian media to play down on their bowlers to sort of make out there's a weakness? I don't know. It's intriguing. Akash Chopra was talking about it as well.
They're pretty honest, the media out there, aren't they? They don't play mind games.
Not
to get a position thinking. So they're either think like their team's the best or the worst. There's no real grey area with the journalism. So I think if they're saying what they're saying, for me, they obviously believe that there is a concern there. And for me, if I was an England side, I'd be certainly looking to get on top of that attack as quickly as I could in the first game. Not let those spinners come on and get into a rhythm. I think that Owen will be saying, let's play this on the front foot. Let's put the pressure back on them rather than feeling our way into the series. Let's send the message straight away.
Which has been his, the whole reason he's been successful as a captain. Really, he took over after the 2015 World Cup when we were an embarrassment. Really, we got knocked out. I think we lost to Bangladesh, or we got New Zealand bowled us out for 90 or something, and we were one of the worst sides in the world. But, he's come in, and I think the attitude is, we're just going to throw punches and we're going to go down fighting, and we're just going to go for it. So that's, as Simon's got to be right. They've got to be sat there going, we're going to go hard at this bowling attack and see if we can get on top. It'll be interesting to see what the conditions are like. I know in the day-night test match, the dew played quite a factor, so I wouldn't be surprised if, I think they're all day-night games. Is that right? I think the T20, I know that the first couple are. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 5 tosses, everyone decides to chase. There seems to be a massive, Pakistan, the PSL, I think the first 17 or 14 games were all won the toss, all chased, all won. So there seems to be a massive thing at the moment with sides winning the toss and chasing successfully. So I would imagine that's going to be the tactic here, and especially with the India's bowling attack. You often find that not poor bowling attacks, but bowling attacks, they're inexperienced, struggle to defend scores. So I would imagine that England's tactic will be they'll just look to chase every game if they can and go from there.
So you're not suggesting, though, and I'm thinking out aloud here, that India are underdone in the bowling or weak because they're resting a lot of players and they're not seeing as much importance? I don't know, because I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just trying to surmise as to the weakness of the bowling and how that could have eventuated. Other than Bumrah, who's being rested, I get that, and getting married and what have you.
I don't think we're saying it's a weakness. I think we're just saying that compared to England, there's not as much international experience, and these guys have got a lot of IPL experience, and that in a way is as good almost as international. Standard wise, a lot of those games are quite similar, but it's different pressures. You're playing for your country all of a sudden. You're pulling on the jersey for the first time, and it's just that experience side. And these guys are obviously great bowlers, but they'll be wary. The Indian bowlers will be wary who they're up against. If the core open the bowling, his opposite numbers Jofra Archer. That's all of a sudden that's a lot of pressure, because Jofra Archer is probably recognised as one of the best in the business. He's played a lot of IPL stuff. The Indian fans like Jofra Archer and know how good he is. So if they're then going to start comparing him, that's additional pressure as well, isn't it? So I don't think we're saying that they're a poor bowling attack by any stretch. I think they're obviously very good.
I know. Again, I wasn't referring to you specifically. I'm talking the general discussion about weaknesses out there. That's all.
Yeah, I think as well, India have a bit of a reputation in non-tournament cricket, so non-major tournaments, that they actually try to give as many players opportunities as they can in one-day cricket, to build a big pool of players so that when it comes to tournaments, they then nail down their team. They're not ones to play their strongest side all the time in one-day cricket, I've noticed. And that's for various reasons. I don't think it's a rotation policy. No. I think it's just that they have got a lot of good players, and they want to have a look at players and realise that they want to keep players on their toes. So, but ultimately, when it comes to the World Cup, they'll have their strongest team there.
Which is just, I guess the only player they've intentionally rested is probably Bumrah. Shami would be playing with it. Well, in my opinion, Shami would be there. He's obviously injured. I don't know what Jadeja's fitness is like. So they've had a couple of probably enforced changes, but at the same time, that gives them a good chance to have a look at a couple of blokes, doesn't it? So, the rotation thing we obviously spoke about in the Test series, I think that's just going to become part and parcel of the game. Chris Silverwood even said in an interview this week that we might consider rotating in the Ashes series, and if he does that, I think his job. I think he would. I don't know. I think I'd just say, don't bother coming into work Monday morning, because I don't think English fans and English press would take that. I don't think they'd like that at all. It's India series. It's tough, but I can see it, but you can't be resting your blokes for an Ashes series. Absolutely no way.
It's an interesting, just coming back to the series here, there's an interesting comment on there by Ryan Kay. He just said that India have won against England in the last two series, home and away. They won in England 2-1. So the last 5 games they've played, it's 4-1 in India's favour. So, that just shows you the depth of player they've got. So even though they've made changes, they mustn't be underestimated, that is for sure.
No, absolutely. I think these two are by far on the way the best one-day sides, white ball sides, 2020 and one-day sides. Guri Banker saying England is a team of flat track bullies. I mean, interesting point. I think it's 2 points to it. I think it's harsh because we've probably been the best side World Cup wise and ranking wise. We've beaten lots of good sides home and away, but at the same time, 2020 cricket and white ball cricket typically is played on flat wickets with white balls. So the Indian, they'll want to put out flat wickets. So you can only put, we beat New Zealand in the World Cup final. I know you're going to say we didn't beat them, but that wasn't a fairly green. They had to work hard for that. So I have no doubt that these wickets in this series are going to be flat, and they're going to want to see 200 plays 190, 200. That's the way it's going to go. They're going to want to see big scores, and it's the first time these sorts of games have been played at this stadium, so that they're probably not sure what the wicket's going to be like. I know the test match was the test match. The wickets will be very different, and it's going to be interesting to see how that wicket goes, because I'm assuming that they're going to be playing lots of IPL stuff there. They're going to be playing the T20 World Cup, probably the final there. So it's going to be interesting for them to see exactly what the wicket's like.
I think given the due factor and what I saw during the test match, I think pace off the ball is going to be a crucial factor in the game. I think the ability for the seamers to bowl cutters, into the pitch, back of a length, is going to be crucial. And spinners are going to have to be wily, because if you're bowling in that second innings with a damp ball, it's not going to be easy. So yeah, for me, I think pace off the ball, bowling stump to stump could be the way to go.
It's funny when you mentioned the words flat track bully a few times. All I'm thinking of when you say the term is I'm picturing Chris Gale or Matthew Hayden. They're the ones I keep thinking of. It's a funny term, a flat track bully. I don't really understand it, to be honest.
You just got to score runs that you put. We spoke about Matt Hayden the other day, didn't we? And our differing opinions on him. I think the key thing for England is
tell me you weren't saying Matthew Hayden was a flat track bully. Please tell me that.
No, I didn't use the term flat track.
Yes, you did.
He
played at Northampton, and it was against the worst teams.
I said that he scored his biggest centuries against some fairly ordinary opposition. That's what I said.
Okay. Well, that's
30 Test 100 at 52, and he only scores runs with it.
380 against, what was it, Zimbabwe or something?
But that's like,
But you can't blame him for that. Jeez.
Well,
he can't, an opportunity.
Can't hang his hat on that being an incredible performance.
He can hang his hat on the average 52 in Test cricket with 1300.
Right.
That's the same as Tendulkar, like average.
Sorry, no, I didn't realise it was you. Sorry.
I actually think that Chris has a Matthew Hayden poster on the inside of his bedroom wardrobe.
I was a left-handed.
We have definitely.
I was a left-handed opening bat growing up when the Australians were dominating. Like, who else was I to look up to? Matthew Hayden was. It wasn't going to be Justin Langer nurdling it round. It was going to be Matt Hayden striding down the wicket and boffing bowlers over mid-off the four, wasn't it? Like, he was.
What about Hayden and Gilchrist? Compare the two there. I mean, who would you say was more pronounced when they batted together, comparatively? Not Test cricket. I'm talking about the shorter format.
Well, Gilchrist definitely took the pressure off Hayden. He Gilchrist was the go-to man, and Hayden just played.
Exactly.
Here where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, Matthew Hayden is probably, I'm pretty certain he's on the inside of one of the cupboards. If you turn around behind you, you'll be fine. Okay. Now, I'm impressed with England. I think that having come through a ringer in the Test series, there's so much positivity about this T20 series coming out of their mouths. It's quite astounding. They've got. I mean, Alan Morgan's come in there and really enlighten them. Even Liam Livingstone's come in there with a great positivity. He was one of the previous press conferences. It's been very impressive, I must say. I'm very taken aback at how strongly they've come across, and that's a good sign. A very good, positive, distinct sign. There's no dragging the chain after a Test series like that.
It's very un-England-like, if I'm honest. Normally we're fairly conservative and hedging our bets. So I think it's something that they've worked on. I honestly believe, it's something that Owen Morgan with his support staff or psychologists would have sat down and said, how can we go to India and win? And I think this would have been one of their points of strategy is let's get the message out there in the media. Let's show how much we believe in our abilities and our successes as a team.
It's been very deliberate, I must say. And even Josh Buttler, now he's clearly going to keep in this match, but the superlatives he gave towards Ben Folkes and even the relationship to Bairstow have been quite impressive. Mm-hmm. I really like Butler's demeanour. Yeah. He's impressed me. Even the way he handled the questions about Alex Hales, it was like, he's a part of us. Get ready for him when it comes to the World Cup. etc., etc., etc. We know what he's capable of. There's a lot of certainty about their intent about what they're doing, and that, I mean, obviously they won a World Cup recently, which hasn't exactly, it's done a lot of good, but there's an attitudinal change that's quite impressive. I'm very, very impressed actually, and
you can see why when you see Josh Butler interviewed, why they like him so much as a character, and because I personally think that he's picked in that Test side as much to do with his role in that leadership group and who he is as a character as much, because his ability is in white ball cricket is unquestionable, but Test cricket, he probably isn't quite where he would want to be. If it was just down on performance, I don't think he'd be in that side. But when you see him interviewed, you can see I think almost a calming. You look at someone like Kohli, who I think would be quite a sort of up for it in your face in a good way captain, whereas you can see Josh Butler seeing a bit more reserved, but that calming sort of influence on the side. So you can see why they like him, that's for sure.
Well, both Folkes and Butler, let's compare those two to, say, Wade at the moment. Punt to an extent. Wade's become a real problem, I think, to be honest with you. He was very good at one stage, but he's actually become on the nose for a lot of reasons, and I think his chirpiness hasn't worked, and hence he's not the Australian keeper anymore. And even in the short format, there's something not right there. There's an ill will. Even in the New Zealand series, something's not right. There's a lot of issues there, and it stems from Matthew Wade, to be honest. And there's an attitudinal difference between someone like Butler and or Folkes and Wade. I think we Australians need to learn from that at the moment. We've got some implosions going on, I'm afraid.
It's an interesting place, Australian cricket at the moment. Just watching from the outside, I'm intrigued. The way their batters are developing out there is something I'm, Chris just mentioned earlier about all the Australian batters that used to come and play in county cricket. When you look for an overseas batter, it was always an Australian initially, and now, if you were signing an Australian batter, where would you go? There's not loads that you would be going for. The wicket-keeping situation is an interesting one. And spin bowling. You're talking Australian cricket, really the fast bowling unit is probably their biggest strength. But if I was sitting there at the moment, I'd be questioning a lot of things about how we're developing our players and where they're coming from, for sure.
Well, Mitchell Swepson, he's got a stress fracture of the upper neck, or the vertebra. I'm not sure exactly what bone it is, but it's somewhere in that region from his overspin bowling. That shocked me. I've rarely ever heard of a spin bowler, no matter what amount of movement they make, to have that issue. Is he being over bowled? There's so much pressure on him to be the next spin bowler, and they've really hammered him on that. This is Test related. I think they've overworked him.
Who's that?
Sorry, Swepson. He's actually Adam Hollier mentioned it because he's obviously the coach of Queensland, and he was concerned that he had done a stress fracture in that area of his body. He was quite shocked. Adam's amazing. I think he's sensational the way he's explaining things. He, to me, is there could be the saviour of especially Queensland cricket, and he could well get a higher role in Australian cricket. Watch out for this space. I've got a feeling that if they have a good look at the way that Adam's approaching both batters and bowlers, he's a lot more relaxed. He's taking a lot of pressure off the element of high performance, which has gone a bit AWOL in terms of, again, people having stress fractures the way they are. There's a lot of emphasis played on that. I think there's something wrong with that. Something's quite destabilised, and I think Adam's tonic. And I mean it quite. When I hear him talk, it makes a lot of sense. And he has I wouldn't say an old world approach, but he's a much more relaxed coach. And I think they need that. Lang is far too intense. We know that, but for good reason. But I think he's also has to back off. There's a lot of pressure being put on individual players in Australia, and we're not performing, and the pressure's heaping on them even more.
I think with all the cricket this year, there'll be the Australian coaching staff and the Australian fans will be sat there thinking, please, Mr. Hazelwood, please, Mr. Cummings, do not get injured this year, because those two are going to be. I think that could be the ashes on those two's fitness and bowling well. Take Pat Cummings out. As Simon said, the the Australian seam bowling is their strength at the moment, and that's always been probably the strength when England have gone down there. And if Mr. Cummings, and let's face it, he's been better the last couple of years, but he's known for an injury, and they'll be sat there going with T20 World Cup and IPLs and other stuff like that. They'll be praying that those two blokes are fit come the Gabba on mid-November, whatever, because that could be the difference.
Well, they've got the likes of Sean Abbott's pressing, but quite frankly, he's not the solution at all. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Jai Richardson's the next sort of cab off the rank, isn't he? He's quick and obviously not massively experienced. Yeah.
He had an injury issue as well. There's something, and I'm glad you're saying something, because something's not right with Australia at the moment. I think their expectation of winning has always been there, and because it's not happening, they're putting way too much pressure on. They need to take a step back and pick people in positions that they're meant to be in, and not out of positions. They're doing that way too much. It was evidenced even by the Test series. I mean, Joe Burns and the issues around his position were notable as well. Anyway, it's something that we need to learn from, and you ebb and flow with. I know Australia can be the best and not doing that well. England was not the best, it's the best. It's kind of it takes its turns, but yeah, it's extremely interesting at the moment. I'm particularly worried about Australian cricket, to be honest.
I think it depends on the makeup of the coaches. I don't know what Langer's number 2's like, but you would expect the perfect fit. And Simon's been a coach or head coach. You would say that someone like Justin Langer needs someone a lot calmer as his number 2, like an assistant coach. And he needs someone. I don't know what Graham Ford was like when he was at Kent, but he might have been quite a typical Safa. Like quite like almost not intense, but I bet he would need someone as his number 2 that complemented him the other way, if that makes sense. And sometimes that's how.
So probably it was the other way around.
Okay, yeah. But you know what I mean? Like
very laid back, and I was probably a young coach who was probably a little bit too intense. So we complemented each other really well.
Good example.
Langer's number 2 is equally as intense. There's not really much
Andrew
place for players to go.
Andrew's not intense from what I hear. Andrew's pretty laid back, and I think that's why a lot of players are going to Andrew, to talk things through. It's an important role, as an assistant. You're the kind of glue between the head coach and the players, and it's important that flow of information is constant. The danger is that the media can jump on it and say, "Oh, the players are going to Andrew McDonald, Justin Langer's, not wanted around the dressing room." I don't think that's true. I think you've got to be realistic. Is that the head coach sometimes, players aren't going to go to the head coach because he's the decision maker, and some stuff they want to talk about, they aren't going to open up so much. So as long as they've got someone who can portray that information back to the head coach in a diplomatic way, then that's a good system.
Well, I can give you the best example about Justin Langer. A couple of years ago, just on 2 years ago, Sachin Bajaj, who you know well, Simon, and I were near the Australian dressing rooms, and Sachin was invited by Justin Langer in, and Justin was incredibly upbeat and relaxed and welcoming. Then this last series, there were moments that I was, for example, across the road doing a report, and he was coming out in the stress of COVID and all of those restrictions. He looked very snappy, like he was reacting to who was watching them leaving the ground, and very edgy, extremely edgy. Now, forgetting results, it's not what I'm talking about. There was a demeanour change in Justin, I noticed, from being a lot more relaxed to being a lot more stressed. And I think I've got a fair observation. I think I know the guy, especially having watched what's going on.
How long has Justin been in the job now?
At least a couple of years.
Yeah, so he's starting to get to that, that period. I believe you've got 3 to 5 years as a head coach, and if you get to 5 years, you must have won a couple of things on the way,
Exactly.
And he's just getting to that point where the team is being questioned. One day cricket has probably been a disaster, if truth be known, from an Australian perspective, because they would be expecting to be up there competing all the time. And the Test cricket has shown some really good stuff, and now it's just wobbling a bit at the moment. So I can understand why he might be feeling it a bit. But
it's pretty obvious, and that's not a bad word to say about Justin Langer. It's just evident, very evident. And Andrew McDonald, as you said, is much more relaxed than they're going to because he is that way. But it's intriguing. Whereas you look at India, Ravi Shastri is incredibly, he is well liked by that team. He's looked up to highly, very motivational. Virat Kohli looks up to him greatly. It's a magnificent synergy going on there. And England, I mean, Chris Silverwood, he's been fantastic. Again, I keep referring to his press conferences. They've been monumentally interesting and very insightful. And he must be an amazing person, my observations.
And that is Chris. You know, what you see is what you get. He's a genuine guy. You know, I'm very lucky to have worked with him a few years back. And, you know, the qualities that I saw in him there was someone who loves the game of cricket, is an outstanding coach from a point of view of getting into the nets with the players and working with them one-on-one, but someone who's very ambitious, you know, and, you know, with his Yorkshire background, doesn't like to lose cricket matches. So, you know, the one thing about Chris is, you know, that he's giving 100%. My one concern about him at the moment would be burnout, because I know how much he'll be giving and the bio bubble and everything else. So I hope England have got a plan for him to have some time off, but you know, because he's been out there for the whole of these trips. But for me, you know, he's doing a brilliant job and conducting himself superbly in front of the media.
Well, Marcus Trescothick has arrived, hasn't he? I believe, and who would have the change as well. I mean, there's been a few additions that have taken place, and Jeetan Patel got himself a permanent role. Again, hopefully that's done the tonic to maybe take some pressure off him, if there is any.
Yeah, but don't forget, he's got two other assistants in Graham Thorpe and Paul Collingwood there as well. So, you know, they've been involved in the system long enough now, and particularly the one-day side. You know, Owen Morgan runs that ship. You know, Chris is more focused on the test side and probably a bit more hands-on in the decision-making. So for me, you know, Graham Thorpe could easily step up and take on that mantle to give Chris a little bit of time off. And I'm sure that's in the plan somewhere down the line.
What do you think that if you're rotating players, why can't you rotate the coach? You know, why can't he, if all the players are having a month off or 2 weeks off, why can't Chris Silverwood do the 2020s here, then go home for the 3 one-days? You know, it's especially with Owen Morgan, you see my interpretation of Owen Morgan is that's his side, and although he obviously utilises the coaching staff, you could trust him to lead. If you know what I mean, like the side is a lot more settled. You could see that 3 one-days in India, you probably could say to Chris Silverwood, go home, freshen up. You know, we've got a big summer ahead, and go from there. I saw the interview with Chris Silverwood where he said about rotating in the Ashes. Do you think that that's obviously what you said, Simon, about Test cricket is he loves his Test cricket, the Yorkshire background? Do you think that he's been told by the hierarchy that that's the plan? Because I don't believe that he's sat there going, gee, I hope we don't pick Joss Butler for the 3rd and 4th test in Melbourne and Sydney because he needs a rest. Surely he's going to be wanting to put his best side out all the time.
Yeah, no doubt that the hierarchy, they would have all been around a table discussing strategy and what were their key wins, you know, because it's all linked to funding as well. You know, there's government funding that they get if they win certain things. So yeah, you know, there would have been some direction. And ultimately, they've got to make the decisions accordingly. You know, I still believe, you know, you need your best players for your biggest tournaments. Now, this Indian series, India and Australia, for me, are your two biggest tournaments other than the World Cups. So, you know, all the rest, for me, you can rotate as much as you like. But for those ones, they're the ones that people watch. They're the ones that bring the sponsors in. So, you know, India, Australia, and the World Cups, let's play our best teams.
I think that the public and the pundits and everyone has accepted it in this India series because it's in alien condition. You know, it's a place where they weren't expected to win. But if they start doing it in the Ashes, I think that there'll be heads on the line because I don't think people, fans, the players. I don't imagine you saying to Jimmy Anderson, "You're not playing in Perth this week because, you know, we think you need a rest." You know, the players aren't going to be very happy with it at all, and they've expressed it. To be fair, you know, I think Jimmy Anderson came out and Josh Butler have said, we understand it, but we don't necessarily agree with it. So if they decide that that's what they're going to do in the Ashes, there'll be a lot of very unhappy people, and it will be there'll be some people kicking up a stink, I would have thought.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. It was interesting because the pink Test match, the selection around that told me that there were players who wanted to play Test cricket. It wasn't necessarily, and ultimately people have got to make decisions, but I think those decisions were influenced by some self-interest, and it wouldn't have surprised me if some senior players lent on Silverwood and Root to say, we think this ball's going to swing and we should be playing, because they are coming towards the back end of their years, and like you say, they're going to want to play in every big game that's going. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't know any player that doesn't want to play. I'd be amazed.
Do you think that James Anderson will stop playing Test cricket or retiring full stop on the basis of his own decision? Please don't take this wrong. I'm not knocking him as a player at all. He's been the best bowler England has produced in terms of especially pace bowling. There's little doubt about that. Records show that. But is it the point where, even if he is still playing well, where I would consider he's best finishing when he's on top rather than when there's any potential in not being on top? And that's what concerns me. He's bowling exceptionally well. He deserves his place well and truly. But there's going to come a point when he's going to lose it a little bit. And I don't want to see that. I'd like to see him do a Shane Warne or a Glenn McGrath where they left at what I would call their peaks, regardless of age. And that's my point.
I think you're right. I think you're right, but at the moment there's no sign of even a slight decline, and he's fit. He only plays this. He could take. We've got another 13 tests this year. Let's say he plays 10. Let's say he plays 4 in Australia, and they might rotate him one of the New Zealand tests, but he'll probably play all 5 against India, I'd imagine. He could take another 50 or 60 wickets. All of a sudden, he's at 670 test wickets. He's only 30 behind Warne.
Well, deservedly so.
But what I'm saying is, I think that he will make that decision himself. But there's no sign that he's on the decline at all.
Yeah, the next 2 major series, obviously next summer here and Australia away with the Ashes, that will dictate. He'll know. He'll know. He'll say, "Do you know what? I should call it a day," or "Do you know what? At the end of this English summer, that'll be my lot." I think it will give him a huge indication, and others, how much longer he's got to go. It wouldn't surprise me if next summer was his last summer. Finish his career in England. He's England's all-time greatest bowler. You don't want to finish in the Ashes in Australia. He'll want to finish in front of his home fans, and rightly so. So
in front of a crowd too.
But you get my point. For the sake of his, it's not a matter of reputation. I love the way that Shane Warne did it. I love the way that even Michael Hussey, when he left, you would argue prematurely somewhat. I like that about a cricketer. I want that to happen with James Anderson. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Fair point.
And I don't want to see it happen that he fights like cat and dog to keep on his position and then gets told to go. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I tell you what, if it keeps going beyond that, it could happen. And that's where I think next year, it's still a long way off, let's be honest. But if that's where he's playing and heading for, well, then great, but make that decision and work towards it.
I think that I'd be surprised if there hasn't been, if he is thinking about it, if there's not discussion. Munchie just put in the comments, it'll be interesting to see where the test matches are next summer in England, because if we play a series and Old Trafford is in a test match or last test match of a series, I think that that's in the mind of the selectors. If they have an influence where test matches are, what order, and you see Old Trafford, the 3rd test match of the series against Pakistan, then you would start thinking, he's got one of the ends is called the Jimmy Anderson end. You wouldn't be surprised if he's already pinpointed that as an option.
But let's also not forget the test players don't always get this perfect scenario when they finish playing cricket.
But there's not. I mean, it's
God forbid he goes through injury. I don't want that.
Exactly. There's a lot. I mean, in my opinion, my humble opinion, if he has a great domestic season as an international season at home, that's a great crescendo for him. Admittedly, he's missing out on Ashes. I grant that, but I prefer him to do that than go through an Ashes, get injured, all sorts of complications, and then sort of whittle away next home series. That takes the shine off him.
Yeah.
Because Shane Warne could have played another couple of seasons without a doubt. Okay, so could have a number of players. I could Jack Cullis, even Graham Smith. There probably were a number of players we can talk about that could have played longer. That's all I'm saying. It's not about him specifically, but that actually, I have been thinking about that a lot because I think the man deserves to go out in the high. He's the best statistically. England Broad won't catch him, I don't think. So it's
best statistically ever, isn't he? Really, if anyone, he's statistically the best seam bowler ever.
Absolutely, but you want him to finish on that note.
The problem is, I guess, with some players that have retired, you could start to see gradually that they weren't quite at their peak. Whereas, the numbers Anderson keeps churning out just keep getting better, and it's one of those things where I'm sure it's in his mind that as soon as I do start to decline, then I will. But at the moment, he's just, he's come to India and gone, been phenomenal. And, he's going to have 2 home series in England and probably be just as good. And I agree that he'll want to go out on a high, but he's probably sat at the moment thinking, geez, I feel 30. I don't feel old. I'm bowling as good as I've ever bowled.
But isn't that the very reason why you want him to, say, go at the end of a summer series in England now? Because he is at that high and he could have another year in him, yes. But I don't know. I'm just sorry. We'll talk about this in a year's time and just see what
I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, if he's on 670 Test wickets at the end of this summer, every England fan's going to be, geez, go and beat Warne, go and get 700. So everyone,
I think people morally. How far do you want to go before it becomes too much? That's all I'm trying to say.
I think players retire for different reasons. I think Alistair Cook retired at 30. Was he 32, 33? I think because he was just done. I think he was burnt out. He still plays cricket. He still plays for Essex. But you read about Alistair Cook, I think he was quite happy going and working on the farm 6 months a year, reading with his family, burnt out, too much cricket. James Anderson just plays Test cricket. He's not playing IPL. He's not playing anything else. So he's fresh as a daisy. And I see him going on a bit longer than, if he could get to 40, it'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
But okay, take a step back. Cook, we all think, we thought nothing but highly of him, and he's finished beautifully. He didn't peter off and get dropped or that's what I'm saying to you. And anyway, I'm pretty strong on this. So
it's funny you mentioned Cook because Cook and Anderson are best mates. So I'm sure those discussions are going on, and Cookie will be advising him, from his own point of view of when that decision was made. So, I think it's always going through a player's mind. I don't think it'll just keep going and going and going.
No.
Okay.
I think a lot of players say that when don't. I think Alistair Cook said, if you told me when I was 30, in 18 months' time I'd have hung my boots up. He said, I've laughed in your face and told you to do one. And he said, I'm sat here now, I just knew. He said, I just knew at the end of that series that he, let's face it, he would still go from the batting for England now if he was still playing, without a doubt.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But I'm saying to you, when a person knows they will go, they go. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I have a sense about James Anderson that he's going to keep going until he drops. That's my impression. Okay, to be honest with you, and that's not a bad impression. He's a great player, but I'd hate to see that happen. That's all. All right. The Indian side, and I always take Buri Majunda's advice very strongly. It's very clear that Rohit's going to be opening with Rahul Dravid. No, Rahul Dravid. KL Rahul. Sorry, I'll get it wrong. No. Okay. You know who I mean. KL Rahul and Rohit and Virat's first drop. But the number 4 on the side is the one that's got a little bit of conjecture, whether it's Shreyas Iyer or, and they're saying, Bob Boria said he was for game 1. I don't quite know why he's for game 1 and not other games. It's an interesting take on that position. Hardik Pandya seems to be in, and also Rishabh Pant. That's very exciting. Those guys, I can't wait to see Pant and Pandya bat together. That's going to be quite something. And then the likes of Washington, Sundar and/or Axel Patel. And then he's got Bhuvi, as in Bhuvi Krishna, he's another. And then he got Shardul in his side, but he's got Yuzi and Deepak, which is at Chahar, as opposed to Chahal, which are there.
I think he's a leg spinner. I'm sure he has a ponytail. Plays for the Mumbai Indians, I think.
Yes,
a little
yes,
ponytail.
yes.
I think he bowls high leggies and
Exactly.
bowls obviously leggy. They're not going to play Akhtar and Washington because they're going to play. Chalal obviously gets in the side, and rightly so. He's probably been consistently one of the best IPL spinners and done well. He's got international experience. So I think they'll go Washington, Sundar. Thing is, if they pick Aksar, they've got Aksar, Chalal, and Chahar. England have got quite a lot of left-handers, so they're going to be bowling into the spin. To Morgan, Stokes, Milan, Curran. So they're going to want to have a balance, and that's why England's spin attack and seam attack is good because you've got one leggy, one offie. You've got a pace and bounce in Wood. You've got an opening bowler and death bowling in Archer, and then you've got a Yorker specialist in Jordan. You've got a bit of everything there, and India just going to want to make sure that
Actually,
they balance
Deepak Chahar is the pacer.
Oh, okay. There is another Chahar that bowls spin, isn't there?
There is. There is.
So
we're talking about Deepak Chahar, the pacer, let's call him.
Okay, then that he'll play. Then they'll play 3 seamers and 2 spinners plus Hardik, I assume. Probably be quite a similar make-up to England. They'll play 5 bowlers plus your 6th bowler that can bowl if required.
I'm particularly keen to see Pandya bat. I don't know. Having seen his net practice, he looked awesome, and he's probably chomping at the bit to play.
Is he fit to bowl, Norman? Do you know?
Is he going to bowl? Well, he's been bowling during the practice sessions quite heavily, so that kind of tells me that he's going to be given a bowl at some stage, as what Chris has alluded to. Yes, I think he's all guns blazing. He's fully and utterly fit, and he's been kept back for this reason, and he's clearly got one eye on the World Cup in mind as well in his positioning. It's intriguing. He's some extremely popular man, and again, his presence is the key as well. It's not just his ability to play, and they need the presence of someone like that because they haven't got a Jadeja floating around at the moment. They need someone with that fielding presence. Pandya is by far the best fielder on the planet when it comes to his best. His ability to throw down stumps is second to none, and that's another added advantage of him. And he's just got that presence about him. So I think he's extremely important. And I'm kind of sad that he didn't get time in the Test series, to be honest with you. I really do. I think not that they needed him; they won without him. But he's a person that's greatly, respected in the way he plays. All right,
they need him fit because he'll play a big role in England. In England, you tend to go with the seam bowling all-rounder typically. Look at Ben Stokes, and he's, I know that Thakur is another batting all-rounder or seam bowling all-rounder, but they'll want Hardik batting at 6 in that England Test series because those sort of players, similar to Stokes, balances his side out perfectly, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, this is I'm getting overly excited about these matches, but this is another chapter of excitement. I mean, the anticipation's high, is it not for you guys? I mean, I think it is.
Yeah.
So many things will come out of this which will lead to future tournaments as well, whether it's IPL or the World Cup and series to be held in England. It's a bonanza of a year between India and England, for God's sake. My heavens.
The only disappointment for me is can't wait. Test cricket is my preference, but who doesn't love this? The only disappointment, I think, and I'm pro him, is I'd love to see Alex Hales in that side just because he's, in my opinion, the top 3 opening bats in the world in white ball cricket, and England, as strong as they are at the top, aren't as good with that in there. So does he have a way back into the side? Who knows? And just going to enjoy it. But
here's a curveball for you. So you've mentioned Alex Howes. You've mentioned James Vince as potential people waiting to come in. Where's Joe Root in the lineup?
Great question. That is a great question. Again, they gave that question to Owen Morgan.
Right.
What's gone on there? I understand a bit about, obviously, horses for courses. I get that. But Joe Root is a magnificent short form player, isn't he?
I think he's got to be in the one-day side. I think that just because this theory with Morgan at the moment, and it's proven to be good, is we're just going to hit blokes that can whack it. Look at the side. It's just guys that go in and go from ball one, whereas Joe Root in at 3 or 4 in the one-day side just gives that really nice balance that you don't have to score 100 off 80 balls. You can get 100 at a run of ball in one-day cricket. He averages 50, and he's not slow. Joe Root isn't an Alistair Cook in there. And I think he has to be in a one-day squad. 2020, I get, but I would have to have him on my one-day squad.
What do you get? Why shouldn't he be in the T20 side?
I get why they don't pick him in the T20 side. He's captain of the Test side. Keep him fresh. You've got guys that, especially in India, when the pitches are probably going to be flatter, you don't have time to. You can afford just to go hard from ball one, and you can pick 7 batters. But he would definitely be in my.
I'm actually not talking about this Test series or this series. I'm talking about the World Cup.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I get why he's not in the T20 squad.
Now.
Yeah, but I would have him in my one-day side for sure.
But I think I know where Simon was heading with that. We're actually, the ODIs, we get that. Test cricket, we get that. But T20, he's more than capable of it. So is okay.
I don't think Simon would have him in his 2020 side today if he was available, though. Would you, Simon?
It's an interesting question. It's a very interesting. That's why I've thrown it out there, because I just think he's England's best batter. In all formats. If you were to look at someone who evolved his game into T20 a while ago, and then he struggled for form for a little bit in the Test side, and then that's when they dropped him out the T20 side. Now the fact he's back into form and scoring big runs, does he come back into your thinking?
Who does he come in?
It's like any player, if you're confident and playing well, you can play any format. And it's easier to go from Test cricket to T20 than it is to go from T20 to Test cricket. And that's why I question Jason Roy at the moment. I think he's the major man under pressure. Bairstow needs some runs. So there's opportunities there. I'm not a Vince fan at top level. I think he gets exposed by better bowlers. I think he's a good player at first class level. I think that's where he performs consistently. But Root's done it. He has won games of cricket in T20 for England, but his name isn't really being discussed, which I find interesting.
Yeah,
I think the series has come at a good time for Bairstow, hasn't he? Did he get 3 noughts in 4 games in Test cricket? He probably didn't want to be there. He got messed around with the rotation, got flown home, got flown back. And although he said that he enjoyed going home and seeing everyone, I don't believe for a second that a character like Johnny Bairstow wanted to go home.
Johnny's someone that needs love. He's someone that needs love and feels wanted. As soon as there's any doubt in his mind that, I might get dropped, or they're dropping me for rotation, but is it rotation or is it that they don't rate me? There's that little seed of doubt goes in there. That can affect him. Whereas when he's in an environment where, you're a good player, Johnny, we want you, go out there and win his matches, he thrives, absolutely thrives. So hopefully we see that in this tournament.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced that Root should be more prominent. I'm just comparing him to both, obviously, Steve Smith and Williamson. Now, Smith is a good example. He'll play all formats, won't he?
Yeah.
Root certainly should as well. Williamson is pretty much there, and in particular, because there's a World Cup not that far away, the significance of that is quite pronounced. And this is literally a rehearsal. There might be play in other countries, yeah, fine, but this is a rehearsal with the IPL into such a tournament. And I think it's extremely important. And I think Root has surprisingly gone off I don't know. Would Joe Root have put his hands on a play, or would it be someone who would? Okay, then who's making that decision in this case? In Joe Root's case,
the selectors, aren't they? There's no way that they'll say to Joe Root,
no.
do you want to play in this one? Yeah.
If saying the obvious, I know it's selectors, obviously, but is it more him?
James Taylor and the coaching staff, I guess, that Joe Root will be wanting to play. all these guys. He's said in the past that he wants to play IPL. He wants to play. He's made a fairly big point that he sees. He wants to have more of a role in all formats, doesn't he? He doesn't want to be earmarked as just a Test cricketer. And he averages nearly 30 in T20 cricket, strike rate 126. I did Google that. I didn't know that, but that's not the worst. 130, 125, 130 is a strike rate.
So say that again, Chris. I missed that.
Strike rate 126 in 32 T20 Internationals.
So a Basra of 158. So anything over 150 as a Basra, you're up with world's best.
Absolutely.
Fact.
There's no reason why Joe Root can't play at the T20 and not be captain. There's no reason why. There's nothing, derogatory towards him as a player for him not to be captain of that format, is there?
Oh, I'm not sure I'd have him as captain. I think Owen Morgan's the right man.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. He could play as a player in a T20 side and not be captain.
Yeah, I just think he gives that top order. I know everybody goes on about T20 and power hitting and all this, but like you've rightly said, your Steve Smithies and your Kane Williamsons are just a little bit of glue. They can still go through the gears, but they've got smart brains, and that's what I think England are just lacking a little bit. It's a bit all or nothing, and to have someone like Root in there might be that extra competitive advantage they could have.
Do you think that it's horses for courses? Do you think if the World T20 was in England this year, that they might have stuck Joe Root in because it could do a little bit more? Do you think India is seen as a potentially flat wicket, batting wicket, so just going to go with the big?
I think it's dangerous to make assumptions. That's the big thing. We've done that during the Test series, and with the pink ball and the day-night test, they made assumptions and they got it wrong. So for me, you've just got to pick the best players that you think can adapt to all conditions, and that's what I think Joe Root brings to the party. That's
extremely relevant. We've got to put the best player on the field that's available, and you'd argue that Joe Root is in that 11 every time. So
here's a question: Why don't you think? Why didn't Alex Hales get picked up in the IPL auction? Generally regarded as one of the best in the world. You see some guys that got picked up, and do you think that his record of bad behaviour, drink and drugs, which is what it is, do you think that the Indian franchises don't look fondly on that? Do you think that that's the reason why he hasn't been picked up? Or, because you see some guys get picked up like Steve Smith.
Well, I have to say I was astounded after the Big Bash. But I've done a little bit of digging on it. And it's interesting. If you look at history of the Big Bash, generally the franchises have paid a lot of money for guys that have done well in the Big Bash. But then they've gone to the Indian conditions and been a complete failure, the majority of them. So I think they've learnt, statistics now over a period of time is telling them that actually, because you've had success in the Big Bash doesn't mean that you're going to go and do well in Indian conditions. And that's what I've been told by a couple of people who were involved in the recruitment side of it. So I thought it was quite a relevant point.
Do you think Hales is more suited to quicker, bouncier wickets, whereas the slower, potentially lower wickets, some batsmen struggle a little bit more?
That's ultimately what they were saying, yeah.
Okay, Liam Livingstone's a good example because you'd argue his BBL form has got him into this squad.
Yeah, absolutely.
That breaks that somewhat, doesn't it, what you've just described?
And he, yes. I suppose, yeah. The Liam Livingstone plays at Old Trafford as well, which goes through his quick wicket. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes in this series with pace off the ball. He'll
definitely get a game or two, in my opinion. They haven't brought him across there just to be warming up the bench. And again, I know I keep saying this, but the press conferences tell me a lot about selection. You bring
I think we've seen both sides rotating.
He was the best player when the England Lions came to Sri Lanka for an A-team tour. He dominated. He was better than everybody else that was there. I just think that there was a bit of off-field stuff that was a question mark. And maybe maybe over the last couple of years he's matured a little bit, and England now feel it's right to integrate him because he is a dangerous player. He can take teams apart. So as I say, his biggest challenge will be the pitches here. I think whether he can transfer that form from playing in Australia. There's
no doubt this series that we're about to see is helping England a hell of a lot for the World Cup. It's going to be a very good hit out for them. India, we know, obviously, well, off they're at home, but it's a brilliant hit out for England. Absolutely brilliant. And let's be honest, it wasn't planned that way because the World Cup was meant to be in Australia. So this has happened rather opportune for England, as it is for New Zealand when they go and play the WTC over there. They're going to have a bit of a leg up as well. So it's intriguing. It's very. I mean, even though England haven't gone that well as they may have liked to in the Test series, their T20 ODI series are going to be without question a lot more in their favour. And I'm starting to turn from being more Indian 3-2 to something a bit more dramatic than that.
I think I'll be delighted. Sorry,
I was just going to say, I hope it goes down to the final decider. I hope it goes
fantastic.
2-2 with the last game all on it. That's what we want. And I think we're going to see some special cricket. I think we're going to, at the end of the series, we're going to remember one or two occasions through this series. That is for sure.
Well, I've got Debashis in the post show where you two guys are not going to be there. So if England do lose, at least I've got Debashis to gloat.
I'll be there if we win. I might be, but I'm not sure. It depends on
I'm going to replay that little segment.
If I'm there, Norman, the one thing you can't accuse me of is being a fair weather fan. I sat through and listened to some other panelists during India's demolishment of us in the Test series, and kept being sat there. So,
but I will replay that little sentence you just put up there. Yeah,
like your football team, Chris.
Yeah, it's not good at the moment. Although cruise through this week in the Champions League.
Yeah.
The main man's back in midfield. Formal upturn now. But going back
rugby league team actually lost to South Sydney Rabbitohs, got beaten by Melbourne rather sadly last night. So it's the first game of the season.
Do you think that Jason Roy? I think this series, England and India will rotate around a little bit. I think that you'll probably see someone like David Malan probably play all 5 games because he's going to be batting at 3 in the World Cup. So they want him to play as much cricket on these wickets. Him getting an IPL gig, he'll be delighted, but England will be over the moon as well because he'll play quite a bit in the IPL. But, Jason Roy, they'll open with a spinner, which is I think why someone like Axar Patel will probably be considered most, because they'll want to open bowl. Jason Roy is a very fine cricketer, but has struggled a bit. He's struggled in South Africa against the spin, open the bowling, but I don't think they'll open the bowling with Washington Sundar turning into him. I think they'll want a left arm spinner turning it away from him. So I think that India might almost pick Axar to bowl 1 or 2 overs maybe with the new ball just to see if they can get Roy out, because when England have done well, those guys set the tone. So it'll be interesting to see what India's tactic is to Roy at the top, because he's definitely not as good against spin, especially early on. Pakistan did it. They had Imad Wasim, I think, open the bowling against him and got him out a couple of times. So I don't see them opening with a leggy. I don't see them opening with an offie. So does that bring into Axar's remit as the left arm spinner to Roy?
Yeah, it's there's so many machinations going on in my thoughts at the moment regarding this. You brought Alex Hale back into my head. I mean, I think he'll be my prediction. My little crystal ball here is coming out. I'm going to see. I said Rohit Sharma gets 1-6 up. I'm expecting Alex Hales to hit the winning runs in many games in the World Cup.
Okay.
Does that please you?
It's great, because I don't think Roy got picked up in the IPL, but players like that, India will be sat there going, if we can nail him in this series, even if he plays in the World Cup, he'll be low on confidence. He won't.
Absolutely.
But on the swing of it, they're going, if he gets 100 and if he gets 100 and a couple of 50s, and he'll be coming into the World Cup full of confidence. So it's an amazing how much a series like this, and same for England. If they can get to a couple of the bowlers, or Rahul doesn't have a great series because there has been, is it him or Darwan, or is it Sundar or Ashwin? There's a lot riding on these sort of series for these guys, and I said from the start that I thought Rahul would start over Darwan. Rohit's one of the best white ball cricketers ever, isn't he? I don't think there's any doubt about that. But
So how many runs is Rohit Sharma going to get today? Chris, it's your turn to predict that. I've done enough prediction.
I think England will win today. I think England win. I think England will chase.
No,
I think England will chase 170.
Hang on, my language skills must be pretty bad. I asked you a question. How many
You are
runs did Rohit
Australian.
Sharma get? Not with the
I think Rohit will get 30 off 28 off 19 balls. There you go.
30 off 20 off 19. Where did
28 off 28 off 19 balls.
Okay, how many runs is Rohit going to get, Simon?
Well, I think it's going to be a belter. I think this first wicket is going to be the best wicket because they want to entertain. So I'm going to back Rohit to get a score today. I think he's going to get. I think he's going to get an 80. Yeah, at least an 80.
At least an 80.
I'd like to say 147. I'd love to say.
Go on, if you're that confident.
I think Rohit's going to be the man of the match.
Okay.
Runs wise, it doesn't matter, but he'll be man of the match. So we've got man of the match 80 and gone from 30 down to 28 off 19. There's no way Rohit Sharma's going to hit 28 off 19. If he's faced 19 balls, he'll be a lot more than 28.
The only thing I would say on Rohit, and it's interesting, I follow the IPL a little bit. He's been poor in the last couple of series in the IPL. He's not had good series in the IPL. He was almost, I took him out of my fantasy team as a guy that you never ever drop.
But the last IPL was in Dubai.
Yeah, but I'm saying is that his form in T20 cricket isn't as good as he would want. So he's going to have Archer running in, and the key thing with Archer, I think, if England can find, if you look at Rajasthan in the IPL, Archer's economy rate in the first 6 and at the end is the best in the tournament. He takes wickets. The reason Rajasthan got let down is because they had no one to bowl with Archer, so sides were literally seeing him off and whacking the other end. So if England can find someone that can keep it tight with Archer, then that's a massive thing for this year. And it might be a Wood, it might be a Sam Curran, it might be a Chris Wokes, it might be Moeen Ali. I don't know what the form, I don't know what they'll go with, but if Archer can have someone to complement him at the start, then that's where England will try and whack it. Look how good he's been. I think his economy rate in the IPL last 2 years in the first 6 overs,
not phenomenal,
6.7 or something. No, gone almost to run a ball. Like that's the game changer. I think he's the potential.
But the question is, and I'm still not convinced, is Archer fit?
I totally and utterly agree.
His elbow injury that he had the injection on, I still didn't see him running in and bowling as quickly as we know he can. And he just didn't look as confident hitting the pitch.
Do you think that he might find an extra 15% for the T20s? Do you think that that's in his head?
Depends if his body allows him to. That's the difference.
If you look at training videos of the players and they emphasise certain players, the initial video of Archer bowling with Stokes was phenomenal. He was electric in that net. We haven't seen him figure in any visuals since that point. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're the ECB, you want to show him firing in the nets and making batters bounce around. The fact that they haven't done that is evidence to me that they haven't got that because he hasn't done it. So I think I've got a video that's got 90,000 views that it was incredible. I watched it a million times myself. The fact is, it was amazing to watch. I haven't seen that video since that point. Whereas Hardik Pandya has been thrown in a lot of videos of his play. I'm a believer in what I'm seeing. The media have a way of doing things to leave out messages. And I can assure you that Bumrah isn't fit and could well be not at his best, and that could fall into the hands of India if they don't watch it.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Like, maybe they're sat there thinking, Archer's our X factor. We just don't want to give anything away. We'll just keep it to ourselves. They'll know if he's fit. Archer know if he's fit. Do they really bother that him steaming in the nets? Is that going to worry Kohli, or is it is Archer going to play? Is he not going to play? Is that more of a mind game than he's fit, he's firing, he's good to go? It's two sides of this coin.
Well, India deliberately didn't show much of Axar Patel bowling in nets at all at any stage, by the way.
Given what we said about Owen Morgan coming out on the front foot in the media, I would have expected Joffa running in and bowling quick after his injury.
Absolutely.
He's back. He's back and he's ready to go. That's my concern is he's not 100%.
Spot on. You've not seen a squat of him bowling. He obviously has, but there's nothing showing him doing that. And in particular, how long he's bowling in the nets. I'm sorry. I think Simon's bang on, and I think I've evidenced that by what I've seen. There's a problem with Bomber, and not Bomber, sorry, with Archer. But the reality is, it's expected. It's only been a split second since that last series. It's an elbow injury, especially to a bowler of his Ferrari-like style, has to be really on top.
And you can only have so many cortisone injections before they don't have an effect. And that's what happened with Flintoff. Flintoff's ankle or whatever it was, he was getting injected regularly, and your body just doesn't react to it any longer. It doesn't have the effect.
Well, Bumrah and Archer are on the even kill with the injury situations. I think they both. Well, there's other reasons in terms of marriage, but they're on the same injury kill at the moment. So, no, I think there's a danger there. Anyway, we've made it very clear that Rowett's going to get 80. Simon said, Chris, 20 out of 19. Where do you get that from? I feel right. I'm going to hide. I'll tell you that much, but I don't know. I don't believe it.
I've just gone off. I think Rohit's one of the best ever in white ball cricket. He's proved it. I'm just saying his last couple of IPLs, he hasn't been as effective as he would want, and he sets incredibly high standards. So it'll just be interesting to see what Rohit turns up, and England will target him. England will go in if Archer is fit, or it'll be Archer or Wood. It'll be one of the two, and they'll go at it. He likes to pull. They've got extra pace. They'll go at him because I think they'll see him as a big wicket early on. Rahul I think he's an awesome player, and it's almost good for him. There's been question marks over his slot in the side if it's him or Dhawan, but it's probably pressure off because everyone will be focusing on Rohit's show, and let him go and do. I think
you did say Rohit's show, didn't you?
Rohit's show. Yeah. I think KL Rahul is as good a cricketer, as dangerous at the top of the order as Sharma is. I think he's a fantastic.
Oh, he is. So they toss normally half an hour before, don't they?
Yeah, in about 7-8 minutes, I think.
So we'll end with that. Hopefully, you'll be able to announce that because I think, a toss is probably less of a problem. But as you said, they're likely to throw the other team in if you win anyway. The toss, that is. So, yeah. All right. I had a partner. I've got a great video of a partner. I'm going to release it. So we went down to our famous Harbour Bridge Opera House again. She's in true form. She finished all her exams, her criminal law exams and what have you. And she's done a bit of homework on it as well, by the way. She's quite adamant about the Indian team and their batting. She did say there was a weakness with the bowling, so she's pretty spot on. So I'll be releasing that later. And we were standing there, I'm not joking, and we were talking, and whenever the name India was mentioned, a big thunderclap came down. So that's maybe a sign. So Anuj Ingle, so we Indians afraid of Archer, Curran, I guess Archer for his bowling and Curran for his bowling? Well,
Archer, Curran batting. I think that what he's saying is that in the IPL, Curran especially, and Archer's done similar. They can come in at 7 or 8 and contribute little cameos, whereas, I think that's another thing that is massive in T20 cricket. Sides tend to pick 5 bowlers, but if you've got 2 guys that can come in at 8 or 9 and hit 20 off 10 balls if required, and Archer's done that quite a bit in the IPL, then that can be the game changer sometimes, can't it?
There is some talk about, and there's a comment that also made which alludes to it, where they could have Rahul at number 3 and actually have Virat Kohli opening.
Or Pant.
Exactly. They've got some spectacular options in T20 cricket to do that.
I don't see Pant as an opener personally. I think he's better at 4 or 5. Same in the Test side. I think that if he's got a weakness, a new ball. He's not. That's my opinion. I bet they don't see him as an opening batter at all in that Indian setup personally, Could be wrong. He doesn't open. He doesn't even open for his IPL side.
Have you bumped into Rishabh Pant on the lift? Did he rub you the wrong way or something?
No, I think he's awesome, but you don't. Why would you start? It's like, why you don't have to always. If a guy does well in one position, you're not going to chuck Ben Stokes in to open the batting because he's England's best player. He doesn't even open the batting for his IPL side. Pant, he's really effective. Just let the lad learn the game.
What number was Josh Butler batting for England?
No, but he doesn't open the Test cricket, does he?
No. I'm just saying he was batting lower order in T20, and then Rajasthan Royals whacked him up the order to open under Shane Warne. And now suddenly he's England's opener. So I just don't think you should pigeonhole players too early, particularly young players, because they might surprise you. And Pant is someone who's shown some amazing skills in Test cricket, So if you can do it in Test cricket against a swinging ball, we'll never forget that reverse sweep off Jimmy Anderson. A white ball that doesn't do a lot on a flatter pitches, it could be devastating.
Is he more devastating than the other blokes they've got at the top there? Now, who does he replace?
We don't know at the moment, do we? We don't know.
I just hope you don't get into the wrong lift at GS Bowl and just happens to be punting the lift and you and him are by yourself. And he goes,
I think he's brilliant.
You're that guy on that Eyes on Cricket show. I've seen you.
I've done nothing but I've sung his praises. I think he's brilliant. I just don't think you need to rush him into I think let lad go and whack it round at 5 first and then see. Difficult to compare him to Josh Butler, who played a lot more T20 cricket and has probably grown into that slot. But Shikhar Dhawan's not even getting a gig at the moment for India. Manik Agarwal, there's some unbelievable talent at the top of the order that aren't even getting a sniff. Pretty sure Shubman Gill. These guys have done well in the IPL. So
Pretty sure has done very well domestically in the last few games I've seen.
Devdutt Padikkal, who we said about one to watch for the IPL. He keeps scoring runs. So India have just got so many. They could put their second string out in a T20 side and probably beat most sides in that World Cup.
I tell you what I used to enjoy actually was remember the one-day series in Australia when Australia had their A team playing it. I think they beat the main side. I thought that was a great initiative. I think India could do that. They could have a triangular with a touring team. I think it would be a great show.
That's a great thought, actually. They should do that. They've got the opportunity to actually have their players play against each other to fight it out. Why not?
Yeah.
Now, Rishabh Pant and Jasprit Bumrah. I've got a good friend of mine, Yashpal Erda, who has a restaurant here in Sydney. He knows them both personally. I'm going to flick him a link to this video and make sure that those two guys get it. So don't be surprised somewhere at some random spot, depending on COVID, of course, you might happen to bump into those two guys.
Interesting, I saw in the news this week that Jasprit Bumrah is actually getting married this week. Did you see when initially they said that he was left out of the last test because he was getting married? Well, he wasn't getting married. They would have known that he was getting married in 3 or 4 weeks. So 2 or 3 weeks. So they've obviously rested him, but guys that he's getting married. So interesting.
Well, have you ever organised an Indian wedding, Chris?
It doesn't happen. It's not like it takes weeks.
My point is, it was interesting. They said he was getting married then. Whereas, do you think that he was actually rotated round given a rest and using that as a good reason why, if that makes sense? Because you got rested in the second test, didn't you?
No, I don't agree, because there is a lot of planning that goes on the wedding and the man's heavily involved. There's all these pre-events and meeting families and friends and giving gifts, and that goes on for. Do
you think as an Indian superstar, do you think that he's asked for that test match off to plan his wedding, or do you think he would wanted to play in that test match?
I think it's a very hard thing to comment on if you don't understand the culture and what goes on behind it.
I just think there was a lot of he was probably rested as much.
I've had to leave players out in Sri Lanka for weddings.
Yeah.
There's a lot more involved.
And it can happen really quickly, So in Sri Lanka, I had a player who suddenly parents found him a wife and had to meet the family and everything and get married because of the auspicious time. It was literally off the plane job. So
if they look at this, their so-called charts, and they see it's the 13th of March at 2:03 in the morning, it's going to happen at that time.
that's it.
I've experienced being to weddings like that, and I'm sitting there going, why on earth are we here at this ridiculous hour? Like at 6:45 a.m.
Yeah.
There's nothing more awkward than, especially the bride, getting ready for 6:45 a.m. It's just ridiculous. But not ridiculous. It's
And the other thing is they actually have lots of photographs done before the wedding.
Exactly.
So they have pre-wedding photographs. So they have to get up in all the wedding attire before the actual wedding day. So, it's
the whole entourage as well. There's a huge entourage too.
It's a completely different event compared to us in the West.
When you marry Lakshmi Sharma, which will happen in 5 years' time, Chris, depending on how your relation, I'm not sure. When you marry Lakshmi Sharma in Assam, which is tea heaven there in the northeast of India, you'll have a lot of ceremonies to go through.
Are you gonna be? Is it Eyes on Cricket be broadcasting it, and I can have all the Indian fans
It'll be live.
throwing balls at me and stuff?
Or with Pretty in Las Vegas, I think, because they've been checking out all the hotels together.
That's another person.
I would suggest there's more chance of England winning the Ashes 6-0 than that happening.
No, hang on, 9-0 from Adam's perspective.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Or how are we going with the?
I've got it
Must
here.
be close. Oh, we're on.
England win toss.
Oh, well, they're
I'd be amazed if we don't bowl. I'm just interested to see what the sides. Archer will play. I think that
Virat needs to practice that a bit more, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Won too many tosses lately.
Morgs.
So you're saying factually that England have won the toss?
Yeah. Munchie's come up online and said England win the toss.
Bit of dew around. I can't hear it because I turned the volume down. But he's mentioned the dew. We will bowl first. I'll be amazed if we're not bowling first. Yeah, England win the toss and choose to bowl. Every toss this series they'll bowl first. I'll be staggered if unless they're trying out a tactic or.
Well, that's a big advantage.
The teams.
No, I'm just going to wait to see what the. I turn my volume off. I can probably.
So England win the toss and bowl. That means India are going to bowl second. Okay, it's clearly an advantage for England.
This is where Rohit gets his 80. Happy days.
Exactly.
Nice wicket. Nice hard ball.
I think it's
not a wet outfield, so the ball's going to fly to the boundary. Chris is struggling.
28 off 19.
Caught Butler, bowled Archer. First over, second over. There we go.
No. You said 28 off 19. Let that go back off that one now.
Stokes, Curran. I heard he mentioned Sam Curran.
Yeah, Curran's going to play. He's their banker.
Again, he was press conference.
Allowed to play IPL last year for a reason.
Do you think he'll take new ball? For an over? Do you think he'll take the new ball, try and swing it in LBWs?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
He's got obviously the Sam and Tom, but there's also another brother who's playing who lives in Australia.
Ben plays for Northamptonshire. Yeah.
He was out.
Roy.
Sorry?
Shivran Shah just put the side in. Roy, Butler, Milan, Bairstow, Morgan 5, Stokes 6, Curran 7, Archer, Jordan.
No Moeen Ali.
Big one spinner.
No Moeen Ali. They've gone with extra seamer.
Did you
Probably
say?
because of the dew factor.
So repeat that again, Chris. Did you say Rory or Roy?
Jason Roy.
I heard Rory there for a second.
No, Roy, Butler, Milan, Bairstow, Morgan, Stokes at 6. I mean, batting lineups.
So we got it right. We got it pretty much right, apart from Moeen Ali not being in and an extra seamer coming in.
I'm surprised at that. But,
so
Rohit's not playing.
Would an Archer both in?
Yeah.
Right.
Music Harmony just said Rohit not playing.
What?
Yeah. Wow. Are you pulling our leg music?
Is that true? Munchie's claiming he called Wood and Archer. We've been talking about both those already, Munchie. You're not calling anything. We called that earlier.
Rohit rested for the first couple of games. Darwan and Rahul opened the batting.
Wow. Well, so much for our 80 and man of the match.
Maybe again because I said, they know he's a banker for the tournament.
Yeah. And
they're using this. This is an Indian trait, to be fair to them. They use these domestic series to give players opportunity to find out about players. It's the one thing they constantly do. If you look at how many players they play in a series, there'll be some chop and changing.
Well, they've playing three spinners.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? That they're playing three spinners and England are playing one spinner. We're back to that stage again of the day-night test match. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that Axar's playing for the Roy factor. I'd be amazed if Axar doesn't open the bowling. I think
really you're right. I think you've nailed that one for sure.
But hang on. Kumar is the only bowler that's certainly to open the bowling. I'm sorry, Charles is a spinner. Sundar Axel, Patel are both spinners. Shardul Thakur does not open the bowling.
But I'm saying Axar Patel will open the bowling because they'll go up with Jason Roy with the left arm.
Yeah, okay. That's right. You said it earlier. I agree with that. I can see that happening. But I'd rather like this Indian side, except for the fact that Sharma's not there. So
in theory, with our predictions, I was closest.
What? Sorry.
I've gone closest to how many runs he scored.
How can you claim that?
He's got no runs.
Absolute balderdash. Absolute.
And that Norman was the furthest away.
Yeah,
is that what
Norman said he'll get 150, so he's miles away.
I didn't say that at all. I said he'd be man of the match.
Yeah, correct. So you're furthest away from the predictions then.
I mean, how? Sorry, let me work this one out. He doesn't play, but that's your closest because he got 28. Where does that come from?
Well, he's obviously been dropped, hasn't he?
Okay.
Not good enough.
No, dropped. Oh, hang on. Another clanger. Rohit Sharma's been dropped? I don't think so.
He hasn't been dropped. That's for sure.
But
they're obviously not sure who they want to open the batting with him. So as Wilco said,
no, they've rested him because they probably think that Archer's going to try his best to nail him in the head or something, and Archer will be gone by the second match with his injury flaring up again. I mean, that could well be the case too. Look, the reality is I'm a bit disappointed that Rohit Sharma's not there, to be honest. That's my thoughts.
I do enjoy Sky Sports in England. I do enjoy this. I've got Nasser Hussain and Michael Atherton in the studio for a T20 game. Brilliant.
All right, so that's pretty conclusive. Does that change anything for you? I think it's
intriguing. The two sides are so different.
Yeah.
I just want to see it unfold. And the fact that India are batting first and have played three spinners. I'd love to know the thinking there. They obviously think the pitch is going to break up no matter what the dew does. A bit like the day-night test, I suppose.
And
or do you just think that their strength is their spin? Do you think that England have just gone in, well, our strength is undoubtedly seam bowling in 2020 cricket, and India's, if you look who they've got available, do you think if Bumrah and Shami had been available, that they'd have picked three spinners and left those two out? Not a chance. So, maybe they're just picking the best side that they've got available, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I come back to earlier, that I think pace off the ball and cutters is going to be crucial for the seamers. Yeah. So the fact that they're playing three spinners tells me that could be what's going on here. So, and the England back with that pace on the ball.
I'm afraid this also is telling me that India's going to win this match. On the basis of the pitch being misread already.
We don't know that. Well, India's still got three seamers.
Let's see the game unfold. I think it's going to be
statistics would suggest in the subcontinent, if you win the toss and bowl first, it gives you a big advantage. You look at the PSL, I think 14 in a row before it was called off. I think the 15th or the 16th game was the first game that a side batting first won. So it is a big factor chasing. Sides do look to chase. So the problem is India have never played on this ground in the T20. They're going to have no idea what a good score is. So, chasing is going to probably even more of a factor, you would suggest, initially. I would be surprised if the pitch gets. I think it might spin a little bit, but it's going to be a pretty decent wicket. I think Indians pride themselves on white ball cricket being good batting wickets as opposed to bowling wickets. They won't want to see 130 plays 120 for all out. They want to see 200 plays 180, 190.
We're going to be okay. So Rohit Sharma, the only thing I'm concerned about, there is no injuries here. This is just rested. Okay,
Cody said in an interview. Cody said he's been rested for the first couple.
Right, which means he will be playing the third, fourth, and fifth.
Yeah, I think he'll play the last three, won't they? They'll give these two guys 2 games to find out what they can do, and then bring the banker in for the last 3.
It's actually very clever because Darwin and Rahul are playing for a spot effectively, and they're going to be going hammer and tongs. Hopefully, they're running between the wickets is sound.
Running each other out.
I've seen stranger things happen. 2 batsmen fighting over a position, and they're running.
It's also a left-hand, right-hand combination, isn't it? Which adds something a bit different. I think that's. Yeah, I like KL Rahul a lot, but you can't say that Darwan doesn't add something a little bit different for the bowling. Potentially take Rashid out of it just because it's turning in. Moeen Ali turning it away from the left-hander, but. The only
Can I make a point on that though? I want to make a strong point about this. I'm not saying I'm sick and tired of this left-hand, right-hand opening partnership, but when you start to, I'm talking generally here, when we start to labour over that, and they must be like that, that's what I've got a serious problem. Australia have gone down that track and made some major failures of late when they've done that, and it's not worked. You can't do that as a rule just because of that theory. It has to be the best 2 batters. If they're both right-handers, so be it. They're both left-handers, so be it. Okay.
Oh, no, I agree. I just think that if it is an option, then it's a good thing to have. I don't think they're sat there going, we have to pick a left-hand, right-hand. I don't think anyone does that. But if you've got it available to you, then it's an additional.
Well, there's some really interesting information coming out on the chat, guys. Shrivam Shah says it's a black soil pitch, unlike the test. So I don't know if you remember, we were talking about that they go through a little bit quicker, whereas the red soil obviously took turn. They're saying it's quite hard and abrasive. Might have something in for the wrist spinners. There could be a lot of runs on offer. So that's quite a significant point as well.
Absolutely.
Indian want IPL wickets, especially at the start. They're all good batting wickets, and I'd be amazed if this one isn't good to battle.
Good.
Okay. I just think that the more I think about Rohit not being in the team, the more I'm not liking it for some reason. I don't know. I think they should have had him blazing early on and taking charge, but it's just my thoughts. Anyway, and I think this left-hand, right-hand thing, Australia's blowing it. I think you'll find Australia won't be talking about that for a while now. They're going to put that to the back burner, this left-hand, right-hand thing. So wasn't Langer and Hayden were both left-handers, weren't they?
Yeah.
So where was the logic there? I mean, I don't
even
agree.
Gilchrist and Hayden.
Exactly. I don't agree. I don't agree at all with this left-hand, right-hand thing. I know it might be nice theoretical way of looking at it. You pick your 2 best players. If they're that with their head using the bat, I don't care. They're the best 2 players. I'm a bit over this left-hand, right-hand stuff, to be honest with you. We've got to get away from that in test or any form of cricket. That's got to be the best 2 batters. Now, they're both right-handers, so be it.
Agreed.
I think that is the cat. I agree with you, but I don't think sides are sat there going, gee, we have to have a left-hand, right-hand. We're not going to pick Matt Hayden.
They actually do. Have you been listening over the summer? They've said that about 1 million times.
Yeah, but I don't think that just because the press say, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think they're not picking someone who's the best player because he's a right-hander. Like, they're going to still pick.
You shouldn't even be mentioning the fact that the 2 batsmen, the left-hand, right-hand. Oh, no,
I'm saying what I'm saying is that in this game, it's an additional little percentage that makes a difference.
Yeah,
I don't think they've sat there gone, we're going to do that. I'm saying that when it happens, it's something for the bowlers to think about. I don't think Cody sat there last night with his dinner going, you know what, let's not play Rohit because it's left hand, right hand. He's saying,
there's no way on earth he said that. There's no way on earth he said that.
Players we've got. Oh, it just happens to be a left hand, right hand.
My question is, if Kohli didn't say it, why are we saying it?
No, that's not what I said. If you listen to what I said, I said
having a go at you. I'm hearing
it adds
that
a
too much.
dynamic to the
Apologies.
bowlers having to bowl at left hand, right hand. That's what I said.
If you're a good enough bowler, you bowl to any hand. If you're a good enough bowler.
Well, of course, but it's still you still have to slightly change your line and length. You know, you are.
There are stats, Norm, in 2020 cricket that suggest that left-handers are more effective than right-handers.
Okay.
That would be a statistic.
Well, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. Then you should bat the whole team left-handers.
Well,
you shouldn't be then. If that's the case, you should have two left-handers opening and not have a left-hand right-hand combination.
Yeah,
even
correct.
more so. Even more so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very strong with that because I've heard it a lot used in a lot of not so much here. I'm talking generally. Anyway, I think this has been fantastic today, guys. Thank you for being here, Simon and Chris. You guys are wonderful. It's just brilliant. I know you're not going to be here later, but Debashis and I will just pick the eyes out of the original discussions and just say, Chris, how could he say 28 off 19?
Well, I was closest. So, Norman, what's your prediction for today then, Norman?
I want you to write an essay on telling me when a player doesn't play at all, that 28's closer to his score.
What's your prediction for the game then, Norman?
I think India's going to win.
Okay, what scores?
Well, India batting second, so it doesn't really matter if it's more what England score, because India will pass it.
India batting first.
145, and no, it's a bit too high, is it?
I think if India get 145, England will destroy that.
No, sorry, I'll take that all back. 176, and England will get a score around 130.
Okay.
Because it'll be smart. Because Axar Patel will take 3 or 4 for.
Different game for Mr. Patel. This white ball, flatter wicket. It's not going to be quite so easy for him. You know, if you look at his bowling in the IPL and white ball cricket, it's good, but it's certainly not 3-4. He's more of a do-a-job bowler. He's not.
Well, then chuck Chahal in there with him, and then you'll see.
I think India to win the game have to get north of 200 to beat England. I think if India get
pitch, it depends on the pitch. If it's spinner friendly, that 200 won't be achievable.
If it was massively spinner friendly, then Owen Morgan probably would have batted first, is what I'd potentially.
Do you seriously think they're going to be a wicket that's going to get more than 200?
I think that wickets I think that there'll be a good batting wicket.
Okay, all right. I'm saying 176 to 130 odd.
Okay. I think India will get 170 and England will chase it comfortably. With a couple overs to spare. You know, I don't think England. I think England will chase unless India get 200. I think England will win it with relative ease.
Simon,
intriguing. The black soil pitch has probably just sold me a little bit. I'm going to say India get 220,
and then England chase.
And England all out 190.
Okay, you're writing this down, Chris?
We can remember it. I don't think it's too difficult to remember. I think for India to win.
Okay, all right.
No, I think I think for India to win, they need to get 200. I think that makes it. I think England will be confident of chasing anything under that.
Oh, I just want to say, like a typical Cousins Imperial Leather Soap commercial, Simon Tahiti. Looks nice. Okay, now, Chris, I'm pretty certain you're not going to be right today.
Okay, I'm as always happy to be wrong. It happens more often than it should.
Okay. All right.
It's grinding though. It's grinding him. I can see it.
I can't see in any way, shape, or form that India would defend 160 as Northern thing.
176. Where did 160 come from?
Same thing, isn't it? 8 and over. 9 and over.
Right, guys. I'm going to have to shift on.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Again, thank you both for being on. Norman Koshnik, Eyes on Cricket. We're going to say goodbye to Simon and Chris. Game is about to start. We'll talk after the game with probably Debashis and a handful of others, maybe a partner as well.
Good luck, everyone. Enjoy the game.
Talk tomorrow. Ciao, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.